You know that moment when the exit sign is right in front of you, but the garage still feels like it is turning you around. These 7 stories are about parking structures that should have been familiar, safe, and easy to leave. But once the levels stop matching the mirrors, stop telling the truth, and the exits move farther away, being lost becomes something else. If you have ever had a strange experience in a parking garage, comment where it happened. And if you want more realistic horror stories like this, leave a like and subscribe before the first story begins. Part 1. I used to think the employee garage was the safest part of the hospital. Not safe in a comforting way, just safe in the boring way. Concrete cameras, painted lines, badge doors, fluorescent lights that never fully shut off. Nothing about it felt private enough for something bad to happen. That was what I told myself every time I walked out there after midnight. I worked the late shift at a regional hospital outside Columbus, Ohio. The main employee garage sat behind the east wing, connected to the hospital by a glass sky bridge on level 3. During the day, it was crowded and loud, full of people, nurses, techs, residents, maintenance, guys, and people eating fast food in their cars before clocking in. At night, it turned into a giant concrete shell. I always parked on level 4B. Not because I liked it, because it was usually where I could find a space without circling. The staff elevators were slow, the lower levels filled up first, and by the time I got there for evening shift, 4B was usually the first level with open spots. That night I parked beside pillar 4B-17, 2 rows from stairwell C. I remember that clearly because I made a joke to myself about it. 4B-17 looked like an apartment number. It was painted in black block letters on a yellow square scratched up from years of bumpers and carts hitting the concrete. My car was a gray Accord. There was a silver sedan on my left and an empty space on my right. Across the lane, a black pickup sat crooked over the line. Normal garage stuff, nothing strange. My shift ended a little after 11:30. By then, the hospital had gone into its overnight rhythm. The cafeteria was closed except for vending machines. The gift shop lights were off. The lobby security desk had one guard behind it, half watching the monitors and half staring at his phone. I walked through the east wing toward the sky bridge, but the glass doors were already locked. There was a laminated sign taped to the inside. Sky bridge closed after 11 p.m. Use ground level exit. That happened sometimes. Usually when maintenance was cleaning the bridge floors, or when security wanted to control which doors stayed open overnight. It was annoying, not alarming. I turned around, took the service hall down to the ground level employee exit, and stepped outside into the cold. From there, I had to cross the loading area and enter the garage from the side stairwell. The garage looked the way it always did after midnight. Mostly empty. Too bright in some spots, too dark in others. The lights buzzed overhead with that tired electric sound that makes every large building feel abandoned, even when people are nearby. At the base of stairwell C, I tapped my badge against the reader. The little light blinked red once, then green. The lock clicked. Inside, the stairwell smelled like damp concrete and old mop water. The door shut behind me with a heavy metal clap that echoed farther than it should have. I started up. 1 flight, landing. 2nd flight, landing. 3rd flight, landing. By the time I reached the door marked 4B, my legs were heavy, and my head was doing that late shift float where everything feels slightly delayed. I pushed the door open. The garage was quiet. My car should have been 2 rows ahead beside pillar 4B-17. I stepped out, looked left, and saw the yellow square on the concrete pillar, 4B-17. Good. Then I stopped. The silver sedan was gone. That was the first thing I noticed. It should not have bothered me. People leave garages. That is what garages are for. But something about the empty space beside my car looked too clean, like it had never had a car in it at all. I walked toward my Accord and reached into my jacket for my keys. That was when I realized I had left my phone charger in my locker. I stood there for a second, annoyed with myself. Normally I would have left it, but I had a 25-minute drive home, my phone was at 6%, and I needed the charger in the morning. So I turned back towards stairwell C. The stairwell door was still closing slowly behind me. That was also normal. Those fire doors were heavy, but the closer on that one had been weak for months. I caught it before it latched, stepped back inside, and looked down. There was a small sign bolted to the wall beside the stairs. Ground exit down 3 flights. I stared at it longer than I should have. 3 flights? From level 4B. I was tired, so at first I thought I was just misunderstanding the layout. Some garages split levels. Maybe 4B was not really the 4th floor. Maybe the sign was old. But I had parked there for almost 2 years. From 4B to ground level was not 3 flights. Still, it was only a sign. I started down. 1 flight. Landing. 2nd flight. Landing. 3rd flight. I reached the door at the bottom and pushed it open, expecting the side exit near the loading area. Instead, I stepped back into the garage. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. The same concrete lane stretched in front of me. The same low ceiling, the same row of pillars, the same yellow square. 4B-17. I turned back to the stairwell door. The sign on it read, Stair C Level 4B. I actually laughed once quietly. Not because it was funny, because my mind needed it to be a mistake. I told myself I must have gone up instead of down. Or maybe I had exited on the same level without realizing the stairwell wrapped oddly. Something simple, something architectural. I stepped back into stairwell C and looked carefully this time. The stairs going down were on my right. I put my hand on the rail and counted each step out loud under my breath. 1, 2, 3. Down. I went down 2 full flights, past 2 landings, and reached another metal door. I pushed it open. The first thing I saw was pillar 4B-17. This time, the black pickup across the lane was gone. In its place was a dark SUV parked perfectly straight, engine off, windows black. My car was still where I had left it. The empty space on my right was still empty. The silver sedan on my left was still gone. I stood there, holding the stairwell door open, listening. No footsteps, no elevator bell, no car engine, no voices from outside, only the fluorescent buzz. I pulled the door shut and stayed inside the stairwell. My tiredness was gone now. I looked at the wall sign again. Ground exit down 3 flights. Then I took my key and scraped 1 short line into the painted metal frame beside the door. It was not a big mark, just enough to prove I had been there. A small silver cut through the beige paint. Then I went down again, slowly this time. 1 flight, landing, 2 flights, landing, 3 flights, door. I waited before opening it. I told myself that whatever was happening, the next thing I saw would settle it. Either I had been confused, or the building had a layout problem I had never noticed before, or someone had changed signs during maintenance. I pushed the door open. Level 4B waited outside, and on the metal frame beside the door, right at eye level, was the fresh silver scratch I had just made. Part 2. I stepped back without thinking and let the stairwell door close. The scratch was still there, fresh, bright, exactly where I had cut it into the paint. I stood in the garage for a few seconds, trying to make the simple explanation fit. Maybe the stairwell looped. Maybe this garage had half levels I had never paid attention to. Maybe the signs were wrong. But I had just gone down 3 flights. There was no version of that where I should be standing beside pillar 4B-17 again. I pulled out my phone. 5% battery. No signal. That was not unusual deep inside the garage, but it made my hands feel colder. I took a photo of the pillar anyway, then one of the stairwell door, then one of the scratch. When I looked at the last photo, I stopped breathing for a second. The scratch was there in the picture, but the sign above the door did not say level 4B. It said, Stair, C Level 2A. I looked up. The real sign on the door still said, Stair C Level 4B. I lowered the phone slowly. That was when I knew I could not keep treating this like bad signage. I walked toward my car. I did not plan to drive out yet. I just wanted something solid. My keys, my car, my parking permit, anything that belonged to the normal version of the night. The Accord was still there, but the black SUV across the lane was gone now. In its place was a white hospital transport van. I had not heard an engine. I had not heard doors. I had not heard tires on concrete. The vehicles were changing while the garage stayed the same. I unlocked my car and opened the driver door. The dome light came on, weak and yellow. For a moment, that little light made me feel stupid for being scared. It was just my car. Same coffee cup in the holder. Same jacket on the passenger seat. Same employee parking permit hanging from the mirror. Then I saw the permit swinging. Not from the door opening. It was turning slowly like someone had touched it a second before I got there. I shut the door and backed away. The stairwell was no longer an option. Every time I used it, it brought me back to the same place, but with one detail changed. If I kept doing that, I had a bad feeling the garage would keep changing until my car was the only familiar thing left. So I chose the ramp. Vehicle ramps have rules. They slope, they turn, they connect levels. They are harder to fake than a stairwell door. I walked to the down ramp with one hand brushing the concrete wall. I counted every turn. First curve, second curve, downward slope, third curve. At the bottom, I found another yellow level marker painted on the pillar, 4B-17. I did not stop this time. I kept walking faster now, past the same row of spaces, past my gray Accord, past the stairwell door with the scratch on its frame. Only now the scratch was longer, not much, maybe an inch, but I had made one short mark. This one looked like someone had dragged the key downward after I left. Part 3. I did not touch the scratch again. I wanted to prove it was real, but something about that longer mark made me keep my hand away from the door frame. I backed into the lane and forced myself to think. The stairwell was wrong. The ramp was wrong. The level signs were useless. So I stopped looking at them. I listened instead. For the first time, I noticed how dead the garage sounded. No wind, no traffic, no distant ambulance sirens from the hospital entrance. Even the buzz from the lights seemed flat, like the sound was trapped under the ceiling with me. I walked toward the outer wall of the garage. Most parking decks have openings along the sides. You can usually see the street or at least feel outside air moving through. But when I reached the edge, there was only a concrete wall where the open side should have been. No railing, no view, just painted concrete. That scared me more than the stairwell. Because I knew this garage, I had parked here for years. Level 4B had open sides facing the loading docks and the back road. There should have been cold air coming through. There was nothing. I turned around and saw the security mirror at the far corner. It was one of those round convex mirrors mounted above a blind turn, scratched around the edges and foggy from age. I could see the lane behind me and it curved and stretched. My Accord was there. The stairwell door was there. And in the mirror, someone had opened my driver's side door. I spun around. My car door was closed. The lane was empty. I looked back at the mirror. The door in the reflection was still open. The dome light glowed inside the car, small and yellow. Then the reflection shifted, not like the mirror moved, like the space inside it had. The stairwell door in the mirror was no longer behind me. It was ahead of me, past the ramp, standing open with darkness inside. I did not walk toward it. That was the first useful decision I made. I turned my back on the mirror and moved toward the area where the outside ramp should have been. I kept my left hand on the wall and ignored every level marker I passed. The first sign said 4B. The second said 4B. The third had been painted over so many times the number looked thick and swollen. Then I felt it. Air, very faint but real. Cold air brushed across my fingers from somewhere ahead. I followed it. The garage changed as I moved, not in a dramatic way. No walls sliding, no lights bursting, just small wrong shifts. A row of cars where there had been empty spaces. A pillar number repeating twice. A yellow arrow on the floor pointing back the way I had come. I kept following the air. At the end of the lane behind a parked maintenance cart, I found a gray metal door. Emergency exit only alarm will sound. I almost laughed again when I saw it. An alarm would have been good. An alarm meant the hospital could hear me. Security could come. Somebody outside the garage would know I was there. I pushed the bar. No alarm sounded. The door opened into another section of garage. For 1 second, I thought I had failed. Then I saw the wall marker, level 2. I stood frozen in the doorway. It was still concrete, still fluorescent lights, still parked cars, but it was not 4B. And from somewhere beyond it, faint but clear, I heard traffic. Part 4. I stepped onto level 2A and let the emergency door close behind me. This time I did not look back. The air was different here, colder, moving. It carried the smell of wet pavement and exhaust from the road behind the hospital. I followed it. Every few steps I checked the pillars. 2A-11, 2A-12, 2A-13. The numbers were finally moving the way they were supposed to. I passed a row of employee cars, a hospital shuttle van, and a locked maintenance closet. At the far end of the lane, I saw a thin strip of darkness that did not look like another corridor. It was outside, a service exit. The door had no badge reader, just a push bar and a faded sticker that said, "Authorized personnel only." I hit the bar with both hands. The door opened. Cold air rushed over my face. I stepped out behind the hospital loading dock, next to the dumpsters and the oxygen tank storage area. For a few seconds, I just stood there breathing like I had run miles. Behind me, the door clicked shut. No alarm, no footsteps. No one came. I walked around to the main employee entrance and found the night security guard still behind the lobby desk. He looked up like he had seen me 5 minutes earlier, not 4 hours later. I asked him what level stairwell C opened onto from the ground exit. He said, "Depends where you badge in. Why?" I told him I got turned around in the garage. That was all I said. He checked the monitor, then frowned. According to the access log, I had badged into stairwell C at 11:42 p.m. from level 4B. Then nothing. No elevator use, no exterior door, no sky bridge. At 4:16 a.m., the system showed one more badge event. Service exit level 2A. He said that was strange because that exit did not have a badge reader. I did not argue. I went home after that. I left my car in the garage and took a ride share because I could not make myself go back inside. The next morning, hospital security called. They said they had found my Accord. It was not on 4B. It was parked on level 2A, 2 rows from the service exit. I asked if someone had moved it. The security supervisor said there was no record of my car leaving its space, no tow request, no garage incident, nothing. When I picked it up, my employee permit was still hanging from the mirror. Same permit, same number, but when I turned it over, I found a short, deep scratch across the back of the plastic. A clean silver line cut through the white surface, the exact length of the mark I had made on the stairwell door. I still work at the hospital. I do not park in that garage anymore. And whenever someone says they parked on 4B, I always ask which stairwell they used. If they say stairwell C, I tell them to take the elevator, even if it says it is out of service. Part 1. The corner mirror was the only part of that garage I never liked. Not because it looked scary. It was just one of those old convex security mirrors bolted above a blind turn, scratched around the rim and clouded in the middle from years of dust and exhaust. During the day, it helped. You could see cars coming around the tight ramp before they clipped your bumper. At night, it made everything look too far away and too close at the same time. I worked in a downtown office building in Pittsburgh, the kind with a marble lobby, bad coffee, and a parking garage that felt older than the building above it. The garage had low ceilings, narrow lanes, and concrete pillars painted with level numbers that had been repainted so many times they looked swollen. I usually parked on level 5 because it was cheaper than the reserved floors and less crowded after 6. That night, I left the office at 11:45. I had stayed late finishing a report no one was going to read until Monday. By the time I shut down my computer, the whole floor was dark except for the cleaning crew near the restrooms. The lobby guard nodded at me when I passed, and I took the elevator down to the garage alone. My car was parked on level 5, 2 rows from the ramp. There were maybe 6 cars left on the whole level. A white minivan near the elevator, a red pickup backed into a corner, A black sedan with a sunshade still up behind the windshield. Normal things that only felt strange because there was no one around them. I got in, tossed my bag onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. The headlights came on against the concrete wall. For a second, I just sat there and let the vents blow warm air over my hands. I remember checking the time on the dash, 11:52 p.m. Then I backed out and followed the painted arrows toward the exit. The first ramp curved hard to the right. At the corner, the security mirror hung above the lane, reflecting the bend before I reached it. My headlights stretched across its surface in a warped white smear. I slowed down like I always did. That mirror had saved me from getting hit more than once. But as I came closer, I saw headlights in it, not mine. At least that was what my brain told me at first. In the mirror, two bright beams appeared behind me, low and steady, like another car had turned into the lane after me. I checked my rearview mirror, nothing. I looked over my shoulder. The lane behind me was empty. When I faced forward again, the convex mirrors still showed headlights behind my car. They sat there for one more second. Then they slid sideways across the mirror and disappeared, as if whatever was behind me had turned off before reaching the corner. I stopped with my foot on the brake. The garage hummed around me, fluorescent lights, engine idle, a faint drip somewhere near the wall. No tires, no doors, no other engine. I told myself it was just the mirror. Convex glass did weird things with light. Maybe it had caught the reflection from my own headlights off a polished bumper. Maybe there was a car on the ramp below me. I looked at the mirror again. Now it showed only my front bumper stretched wide and pale, and the empty lane behind it. I kept driving. The ramp took me down one level. The painted marker on the wall changed from 5 to 4. That made me feel better. A normal number, a normal direction. I followed another arrow marked exit. The lane narrowed, turned left, then bent around another concrete pillar. And there it was again. The same security mirror, same scratched rim, same cloudy center, same yellow paint scrape on the pillar beneath it. I slowed down. That did not make sense. There were mirrors on other corners in that garage, but I knew this one. I knew the spiderweb crack near the lower edge. I knew the old sticker half peeled off the bracket. I had seen it every workday for almost 3 years. I looked for the level marker, level 4, so maybe it was not the same mirror. Maybe every floor had one in the same place. That was possible. Office garages repeat themselves. Same pillars, same turns, same ugly paint. I rolled forward carefully. This time the mirror showed my car before I reached the bend. Not the front of my car, the side. It showed my sedan already halfway through the turn, as if I had rounded the corner a few seconds ahead of myself. I hit the brake. The real lane in front of me was empty. In the mirror, my car kept moving. It turned the corner smoothly, brake lights glowing red, and vanished down the ramp. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. A second later, I was still sitting there, engine idling, staring at a mirror that now reflected nothing but concrete and fluorescent light. I should have gotten out right then. I should have walked back to the elevator, gone to the lobby, and asked the guard to escort me down. Instead, I did what people do when something impossible happens in a familiar place. I tried to make it normal. I whispered nope, like saying it out loud could turn it into stress or exhaustion or a trick of bad lighting. Then I eased off the brake and drove around the corner. Part 2. I took the turn slowly. Nothing happened. No second car, no headlights behind me, no version of myself already ahead in the mirror. Just a narrow ramp, stained concrete, and the sound of my tires moving over painted arrows. That calmed me down more than it should have. I told myself I was exhausted. I had been staring at spreadsheets for 4 hours after a full workday. A scratched mirror and bad lighting were enough to make anyone see something strange for half a second. The ramp curved down again. The wall marker changed from 4 to 3. Good. I kept both hands on the wheel and followed the exit arrows. The lane bent left, then right, then past a row of parked cars I did not remember seeing on the way in. A beige Camry, a blue hatchback with one missing hubcap, a silver SUV with a child seat in the back. They looked ordinary. That was what made them hard to ignore. At almost midnight on a Friday in an office garage that had been nearly empty 2 minutes earlier, there were suddenly too many cars. I kept driving. Another arrow pointed down. Exit. I followed it. The ramp curved hard to the right, and the corner mirror appeared again. Same scratched rim, same cloudy center, same yellow paint scrape on the pillar. This time I stopped farther back. I looked at the level marker first, level 3. Then I looked at the mirror. It showed my car sitting in the lane, headlights on exactly where I was. Normal, I exhaled. Then in the mirror my brake lights flashed. My real foot had not moved. The reflected car rolled backward 3 feet. I was still in park. I looked down at the gear shift to make sure. Drive, not park. My foot was pressed hard on the brake. In the mirror the car kept reversing. It backed out of the reflection and disappeared around the corner behind me. I did not move for a while. The garage stayed silent. Finally, I reached for the paper coffee cup in my center console. It was half full and cold from the lobby coffee shop downstairs. I opened the door and stepped out. The air in the garage felt heavy and stale. My engine sounded too loud with no other cars moving. I walked to the pillar under the mirror and placed the cup against the base right beside the yellow paint scrape. If I came back to this corner again, I would know. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and made myself choose a different route. Instead of following the exit arrow, I reversed carefully and drove the wrong way up the lane until I found another ramp. A sign above it said, "Exit level 2." That was all I needed. I drove down. The ramp was longer than it should have been. The ceiling lowered slightly. The lights became colder. My headlights slid over concrete pillars with no cars between them. Then the lane opened at another blind turn. The mirror was waiting there. Same scratched rim, same cloudy center, same yellow paint scrape, and at the base of the pillar my coffee cup lay crushed flat. Not tipped over, not stepped on, crushed. The lid had popped off. Brown coffee had sprayed across the concrete in a tire-shaped smear. I stared at it through the windshield. I had never driven over that cup. I had driven away from it. I opened my door but did not get out. The cup was less than 10 feet from my front bumper. The tread mark ran straight across it, dark and wet. It was not from my tires. My tires had a different pattern. I knew because one of them had been replaced 2 weeks earlier, and the front passenger tire still had sharper tread than the others. This mark was wide and smooth, like it came from something heavier, a truck maybe, or a vehicle that had passed through that corner without making a sound. I closed the door again. For the first time, I stopped thinking about the exit. I looked at the mirror. In it, the crushed cup was still standing upright. Part 3. I took a photo of the cup through the windshield. Then I took another one after lowering the window. I needed proof before I moved again. Not for anyone else, for myself. But when I opened the photo, the cup was not crushed. In the picture, it was still upright beside the pillar exactly where I had placed it. The lid was on. No coffee on the floor. No tire mark. I looked over the phone. The real cup was still flattened into the concrete. That was when I stopped trusting what the garage showed me. Not just the mirror, all of it. The signs, the arrows, the ramps, even the space in front of my car. I put the phone down and turned off my headlights. The garage went almost black. Only the overhead lights remained buzzing in strips across the ceiling. Without my headlights bouncing off the mirror, the corner looked smaller, less alive. I rolled forward slowly with just the parking lights on. At the mirror, I kept my eyes on the concrete wall instead of the glass. The reflected light moved beside me, but I did not look. I followed the painted lane line under my left tire and watched the slope of the ramp. Down was down. I could feel it in the car, even if the signs lied. For a minute it worked. The ramp tilted lower. The ceiling opened slightly. I passed a marker that said level 2. Then another that said level 2 again. Then another that said level 4. I stopped. The mirror was behind me now, but I could still see it in the rear view. It reflected my taillights stretched into 2 red lines. I covered the rearview mirror with my hand and kept driving. That was when the exit arrows began pointing backward. Not all at once. First one arrow on the wall, then one painted on the floor, then a hanging sign above the lane, exit, turn around. I did not turn around. I drove until the lane ended in a row of parked cars. There was no ramp, no gate, no booth, just parked cars blocking the way like they had always been there. I sat there breathing hard, hands locked on the wheel. Then I understood the part I had been avoiding. As long as I stayed in the car, the garage could keep giving me roads. So I took my keys, my phone, and the tire gauge from the side pocket of the door. I left the engine running because the headlights gave me enough light to see the lane behind me. I stepped out and shut the door quietly. The garage sounded different outside the car, bigger. The fluorescent buzz spread across the ceiling. Somewhere far away, water dripped once every few seconds. I heard no traffic, no voices, no engines. I walked along the wall, keeping one shoulder near the concrete. I did not look into the security mirror when I passed it. I only looked at the floor. Near the crushed cup, the coffee smear had dried into a dark crescent. The tire mark crossed it cleanly. The mirror above me made a soft ticking sound, like metal cooling. I kept walking, past the pillar, past the yellow scrape, past the turn. There was a narrow corridor behind a line of parked cars that I had never noticed before. It was not a driving lane. It was too tight for vehicles with concrete on one side and bumpers on the other. At the end of it, I felt cold air, real cold air. I followed it until I found a stairwell door, Stair B Street exit. The sign looked newer than the rest of the garage. Clean white letters, red emergency strip along the bottom, a small push bar instead of a badge reader. I put my ear against the door. For a second I thought I heard traffic. Then I heard the mirror behind me click again. This time louder. I pushed the stairwell door open. There were no stairs, just a short landing, another gray door, and the smell of exhaust. The second door had no sign. I almost stepped inside. Then I noticed the floor. There were tire tracks in the dust on the landing, fresh ones, wide and smooth, the same kind of mark that had crushed my coffee cup. I backed away from the stairwell and let the door close. Driving had been wrong. Following signs had been wrong. And now the stairwell was wrong too. The only thing that still felt real was the cold air. So I turned away from stair B and followed the draft deeper along the wall, even though every arrow in the garage pointed the other way. Part 4. The draft led me away from the ramp. That made no sense, which was why I trusted it. I moved along the wall with my right hand brushing the concrete. The garage kept trying to pull my eyes back to the signs. Exit, pay here. Level 3, level 4, level 3 again. I ignored all of them. The cold air grew stronger near a row of parked vehicles. A white minivan, a red pickup, a black sedan with a sunshade still up behind the windshield. The same 3 cars from level 5. They were lined up in the same order, but this was not level 5. The nearest pillar said level 2. I kept walking. At the end of the row, I heard it. Traffic. Not loud, not close, but real. A horn somewhere outside. Tires over wet pavement. A bus braking at an intersection. I followed the sound until I reached the edge of a ramp hidden behind a concrete column. There was no exit sign above it. No arrow on the floor. Just a dark slope leading down and to the left. My car was still idling behind me somewhere, headlights washing the ceiling in weak white light. I almost went back for it. Then the mirror clicked again. This time I looked. I know I should not have. The corner mirror was far behind me, but I could still see its dull round face through the lane. In it, my car was not where I had left it. It was rolling slowly forward by itself. Driver door closed, headlights on, no one inside. I ran, not back to the car, away from it. I followed the hidden ramp down, one hand on the wall, feet slipping a little on oil-stained concrete. The traffic sounds grew louder with every step. At the bottom, I found the exit gate. It was half open. The payment machine beside it showed a blank blue screen. No fee, no ticket request, no error message, just empty light. Outside the gate was an alley behind the office building. I could see wet pavement, a dumpster, and the red glow of a traffic signal at the street. I squeezed under the raised arm and stumbled out. The second I crossed the gate line, the sounds came back all at once. Cars, wind, a siren several blocks away, music from a passing car. I turned around. The garage entrance looked normal. Just a dark opening under the building, with a sign that said monthly parking only. My car was not near the gate. I went to the lobby from the street and told the night guard I could not get my car out of the garage. I did not tell him the rest. I just said the exit signs had confused me and my phone was almost dead. He walked down with me 10 minutes later. We found my car on level 5, exactly where I had parked it. Engine off, doors locked, no fresh mileage on the dash. The guard said maybe I had panicked and walked in circles. I let him think that. Before I drove home, I checked the passenger side mirror. There was a long scrape across the plastic casing, fresh, pale, rough at the edges. I had not hit anything on that side. Not while driving, not while walking, not at the gate. 2 days later, I went back during lunch with building maintenance. I asked them about the convex mirror at the blind corner on level 4. The maintenance guy said there were mirrors on every floor. I asked about the one with the spiderweb crack and the yellow paint scrape beneath it. He found it on level 3, not level 4, not level 5, level 3. The mirror had a fresh scratch across the lower rim, the same height and length as the scrape on my car. There was no coffee cup under it, no stain, no tire mark. But that night when I got home and checked the wheel well on the passenger side, I found something wedged in the plastic liner. A piece of soft paper dried stiff, brown at the edge from old coffee. On one torn corner, I could still see part of the logo from the lobby coffee shop. I never parked in that building again, and I do not look into garage mirrors anymore. If I have to turn a blind corner, I look at the wall. The wall lies less. Part 1. I parked on level 3 because the sign at the entrance said the lower floors were full. That was the only reason. If I had known how the night would end, I would have paid for street parking, even if it meant walking 6 blocks in the rain. The municipal garage sat behind the courthouse, squeezed between an old county records building and a narrow one-way street. It was the kind of garage every downtown has. Low concrete ceilings, faded arrows, green level markers, and ramps tight enough to make every turn feel like a mistake. I had been there before, but never that late. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse to pick up copies of some legal records for my father. It was supposed to take 20 minutes. It took almost 4 hours. One office sent me to another office, then someone had to unlock a file room. Then the clerk at the last window said the system was down and asked me to wait. By the time I got back to the garage, the sky outside had gone dark. Most of the courthouse lights were off. The front steps were empty. A few employees crossed the sidewalk with their coats pulled tight, moving fast toward the street. The garage looked almost abandoned. My car was on level 3 space 318, near exit stair C. I knew that because I still had the parking receipt folded in my coat pocket. When I parked, I had written the space number on it with the pen from the courthouse counter. Level 3/space 318. I did that every time I parked in a garage I did not know well. It saved me from wandering around later, pressing the lock button and hoping to hear a chirp. The elevator lobby was at the far end of the level. One elevator sat there with its doors closed and the floor indicator dark. When I pressed the button, nothing happened at first. Then something inside the shaft groaned low and metallic, like the elevator was waking up from sleep. I decided not to wait. Exit stair C was closer anyway. The stairwell door was painted dark green with white letters that had started to peel at the edges. Exit stair C. Below the sign was an emergency evacuation map under scratched plastic. I glanced at it without thinking, then stopped. The map showed the outline of the garage, the stairwells, the elevators, and a red dot near the lower corner. Beside the dot, it said, "You are here level 6. I looked back at the garage wall. The painted marker beside the door said, "Level 3. I looked down at my receipt. Level 3/space 318. For a few seconds, I just stood there comparing them. Level 3 on the wall, level 3 on the receipt, level 6 on the map. It should have bothered me more than it did, but old public garages are full of wrong signs. Maps get replaced, doors get repainted. Levels get renamed after renovations. I told myself the map had probably been pulled from another stairwell and screwed onto this wall by mistake. That was all. A bad map. Nothing more. I pushed open the stairwell door. The inside smelled like damp concrete and old dust. The lighting was harsher than the garage lights, a cold white strip above each landing. The stairs were metal painted gray, worn smooth in the center from years of shoes. The door closed behind me with a heavy click. For some reason, the sound made me turn around. There was another level sign on the inside of the stairwell door. Level 3. That made me feel better. I started down. One flight. The stairwell was quiet except for my shoes on the steps and the faint hum of the lights. Somewhere below, I thought I heard the elevator move, then stop. At the first landing, I expected to see level 2. Instead, the door in front of me had a green sign. Level 3. I stopped with one hand on the rail. At first, I thought I had gone up by mistake. I looked over the railing. The stairs continued down. I looked behind me. The stairs continued up. I had gone down one full flight. I was sure of it. Still, I pushed the door open. The garage outside looked exactly like the level I had just left. Green wall markers, low concrete ceiling, parked cars scattered across the rows. And across the lane beside the same square pillar was my space number, 318. I stepped out slowly. My car was still there. Same space, same angle, same courthouse papers on the passenger seat. For a moment, I felt almost embarrassed. Maybe the stairwell had some short service landing. Maybe it wrapped strangely between split levels. Maybe I had opened the wrong door. Then I noticed the car parked 2 spaces down from mine. When I arrived earlier, it had been a white Toyota. Now it was a blue Ford. Part 2. I stood there longer than I should have looking at the blue Ford. It was parked where the white Toyota had been. Same space, same angle, different car. I checked the row behind it, then the row beyond that, expecting to see the Toyota somewhere else. It was not there. The level was almost empty, and there were not many places for it to hide. My first thought was that someone had left and someone else had parked. But I had been in the stairwell less than 2 minutes. I had not heard an engine. I had not heard tires on concrete. I had not heard a door close. I turned back to stair C. The green door was behind me exactly where it should have been. The evacuation map was still mounted beside it. The garage wall still said level 3. The map still said you are here level 6. I did not like looking at that red dot anymore. I went back into the stairwell and made myself slow down. This time I would count everything. The door clicked shut behind me. I put one hand on the rail and went down. 12 steps. Landing. 12 more steps. Another landing. Then a door. I opened it. Level 3. Same green marker. Same low ceiling. Same space number across the lane. 318. My car was still there. The blue Ford was gone now. In its place was a dark pickup with a courthouse employee permit hanging from the mirror. That was when I stopped pretending it was a layout problem. The stairwell was not taking me down. It was bringing me back. But each time it brought me back, the garage changed one small thing. I pulled the parking receipt from my coat pocket. The paper was damp from my hand. The words I had written earlier were still clear. Level 3/space 318. I tore off the lower right corner. Not a big piece, just enough to leave an obvious missing bite from the receipt. Then I folded the torn corner once and wedged it into the crack between the stair C door and the frame right at eye level. If I came back here again, it would still be there. If it was not, then something was moving with me. I went down again. This time I did not count out loud. I counted in my head. 12. Landing. 12. Landing. Door. I opened it. Level 3. The torn receipt corner was gone from the door frame. I checked the floor. Nothing. I checked the hinge. Nothing. I ran my fingers along the crack where I had pushed it in. Empty. The rest of the receipt was still in my hand, missing the corner. I stepped into the garage and felt the air change. It was colder now. Not outside cold. Underground cold. The kind of cold that sits in concrete. At the far end of the level, the elevator dinged. The sound was loud enough to make me flinch. The elevator doors opened by themselves. No one came out. I should have stayed away from it, but the open elevator felt less impossible than the stairwell. At least it was a machine. Machines broke in ways people could understand. I walked toward it. The floor indicator above the elevator was dark. Inside, the panel had buttons for G1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Number 6. I stood outside the doors and stared at that missing button. Then I saw something pale stuck between two buttons. A small folded piece of paper. It was jammed in the narrow gap between 3 and 5, right where a 6 button would have been if one existed. I reached in and pulled it free. It was the torn corner of my parking receipt. The same fold, the same damp edge, the same tiny blue pen mark from where I had written the number 318. The elevator doors began to close. I stepped back fast. They shut without a sound. For 1 second, the floor indicator flickered on. It did not show 3. It showed 6. Then the number went dark. Part 3. I did not get into the elevator. That felt like the first smart thing I had done all night. The elevator had taken the piece of my receipt without ever opening on another floor. It had shown me a number the garage was not supposed to have. That was enough. I stepped away from it and stood in the lane holding both pieces of the receipt in my hand. The big piece still said, Level 3/space 318. The torn corner had part of the blue ink from the number. I fit the corner back against the receipt. It matched perfectly. I needed rules. Not guesses, not panic, rules. I took the courthouse pen from my coat pocket and wrote on the back of the receipt, Stay off elevator. Then under that, count stairs, mark doors, follow air. I looked around the garage. My car was still in space 318. That helped. It gave me one fixed point even if everything around it kept changing. I walked back to it, opened the trunk, and took out a roll of blue painter's tape I kept there from a project at home. I tore off a strip and stuck it on the stair C door. 1 strip. Then I went inside. 12 steps. Landing, 12 steps. Landing, door. I put a second strip of tape on that door before opening it. When I stepped out, I was back on level 3. The first strip of tape was already on the door frame beside me. The second strip was there too. Both marks were waiting on the same door. I wrote that down. 2 doors, same place. My hand was shaking, so the letters came out uneven. I forced myself to keep going. I checked the evacuation map again. The red dot still said, You are here, level 6. But now, there was a thin black line on the map leading from stair C to the elevator. It had not been there before. Below it in small print, it said, Exit route stair C only. I stepped back from the map. Number. That was not a route. That was bait. I turned away from stair C and walked toward the far side of the level, where the vehicle ramp should have been. If the stairs and elevator were wrong, maybe the open garage edge would still tell me where outside was. Halfway across the level, I passed a security mirror mounted near the elevator lobby. It was small and rectangular, angled down at the payment machines and the elevator doors. I looked into it by accident. In the mirror, the wall behind me did not say level 3. It said level 6. I turned around. The real wall said level 3. I looked back at the mirror. Level 6. Under the number, the mirror showed my car in space 318, but the space marker beside it was not 318 anymore. It was just one letter, C. I stopped looking. I wrote on the receipt, Mirror says 6. Then I folded it and put it in my front pocket. I was done trying to prove it. I believed it now. The ramp was blocked, not by a gate, by parked cars. 3 cars sat across the driving lane nose to wall, perfectly lined up like someone had arranged them there. A gray sedan, a county maintenance truck, a white van with no plates. There was no way my car could pass. But beside the van I saw a metal door I had not noticed before. Emergency exit, no re-entry. There was no level number on it. I stood there listening. For the first time since the elevator, I thought I heard something outside. A faint sound. Traffic. It was weak, but it was real enough to make me move. I pulled one more strip of tape from the roll and stuck it on the emergency exit door before pushing it open. A short concrete hallway waited on the other side. Red emergency lights ran along the ceiling. The air was colder there, and it smelled like wet pavement. At the end of the hallway was another evacuation map. I walked close enough to read it. Level 6, no public exit. Behind me, the emergency door clicked shut. I grabbed the handle and pulled. It did not open. Part 4, the handle did not move. I pulled harder. Nothing. The emergency door had locked behind me. For a few seconds, I stood in the red hallway with one hand on the handle and one hand against the concrete wall, listening to my own breathing. Then I heard the traffic again. It was not behind me. It was ahead. I turned away from the locked door and walked toward the end of the hallway. There was a push bar on the next door. Above it, a sign said, "Ground exit." That should have made me feel better. It did not. I pushed the bar. No alarm sounded. The door opened into another parking level. At first it looked normal. Concrete pillars, painted arrows, parked cars, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Then I saw the wall marker, level 6. The paint was old and green, same style as the other markers, but the number looked fresher, as if it had been painted over something else. I did not step all the way in. I stayed with one hand on the door. The air on that level was colder. The cars were different too. A few had dust across the hoods. One had a courthouse parking permit from 6 years earlier. A county shuttle van sat near the far wall, with an old logo I had not seen since before the courthouse renovation. This was not an empty level. It was a forgotten one. Across the lane, I saw a payment machine against the wall. It was unplugged, the screen dark, the card reader hanging loose. Above it, someone had taped a paper sign, temporarily closed. The tape had gone yellow. I looked for an exit sign. There were 3. One pointed left, one pointed right, one pointed back to the door I was holding open. I ignored them. Then I saw something white near a pillar, a small piece of paper stuck in a crack in the concrete. I knew what it was before I touched it. The larger part of my parking receipt was folded in my pocket, missing one corner. The piece in the wall was that same missing corner, but I already had that corner. I had taken it from the elevator. I reached into my pocket. Both receipt pieces were still there. The paper in the wall was another copy of the same torn corner. Same blue ink, same damp edge, same shape. I left it where it was. That was the moment I understood something simple. Level 6 did not want me to solve it. It wanted me to keep checking. The more I checked, the deeper I would go. I backed out of the doorway and let the door close between me and level 6. The red hallway was still there. The locked door behind me was still locked, but the traffic sound was louder now. Not from the level 6 door, from the left wall. There was no door there, only a narrow service passage, partly hidden behind exposed pipes. It was low, barely wide enough for one person, and it had no sign. Cold air moved through it. I followed that. The passage sloped down. No level markers, no maps, no green signs, just concrete pipes and the sound of the street getting clearer with every step. Halfway down, I passed a stairwell landing. The wall beside it had one painted letter, C. Not level 3, not level 6, just C. The next landing had the same thing, C. The next one too. I kept moving. At the bottom, the traffic was close enough that I could hear tires moving through rainwater. Then I saw a gray door with no sign except a scratched push bar. I put both hands on it. This time, before I pushed, I took out my receipt and looked at it one more time. Level 3/318, still normal. I folded it tight and put it back in my pocket. Then I pushed the door open. Part 5. The door opened into rain, not another parking level. Not another stairwell. Rain. I stepped out so fast I nearly slipped. I was in the alley behind the courthouse between the garage wall and the county records building. A dumpster sat to my left. A row of old loading doors lined the brick wall across from me. Beyond the alley, I could see traffic moving through the intersection. For a few seconds, I just stood there with the door open behind me, letting the rain hit my face. Then the door began to close. I turned and grabbed it, but there was no outside handle, only a flat metal plate and faded stencil letters. Stair C. The door clicked shut. I did not try to open it again. I walked out of the alley and onto the sidewalk. The courthouse was dark except for a few office windows on the upper floors. The front of the garage looked normal from the street. 5 levels, green signs, open ramps, nothing hidden, nothing impossible. My phone had 2% battery, but it had service again. I called a rideshare and waited under the courthouse awning. The whole time I kept one hand in my pocket holding the receipt. When I got home, I put it on my kitchen counter and stared at it until sunrise. It still said, Level 3/space 318. The torn corner was still missing. The extra corner I had taken from the elevator was gone. I do not know when I lost it. The next morning I went back with my brother. I did not want to go alone, and I did not want to explain too much, so I only told him I had gotten turned around in the garage and left my car overnight. At the booth near the entrance, the attendant looked up my plate. He said my car was still parked on level 3, space 318. I asked him how many levels the garage had. He gave me a strange look and said 5. I asked if there had ever been a level 6. He said no. Then he added, not in this garage. I did not like the way he said that, but I did not ask what he meant. We took the elevator up. It worked perfectly. The buttons were G, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. No empty gap, no flicker, no number 6. Level 3 looked normal in daylight. More cars, less echo, less shadow. My car was exactly where I had left it. Space 318, courthouse papers still on the passenger seat. Nothing missing, nothing damaged. Exit stair C was across the lane. The evacuation map beside it no longer said level 6. It said, you are here level 3. My brother told me I probably came out a service door and got disoriented. I let him believe that. At the payment machine near the elevator, I unfolded my receipt to scan it. That was when my brother stopped talking. The line I had written in blue pen was still there, level 3/space 318, but below it, printed in the same black font as the garage timestamp, was a second line. Level 6/space C. It had not been there the night before. It was not handwritten. It was not smudged. It looked like it had always been part of the receipt. The lower right corner was still missing, torn away in the exact shape I remembered. I paid the fee and drove home without saying much. I keep that receipt in a plastic sleeve now. Sometimes I take it out to check whether the print has faded. It never has. I have been back near the courthouse since then, but I do not use that garage anymore. And if I ever see a stairwell marked C, I take the ramp, even if the ramp takes longer. Even if the sign says the lower floors are full. Even if the map says I am exactly where I should be. I paid before I got in the car. That is the part I kept repeating later, because it should have made everything simple. I had the receipt in my hand. The machine had approved my card. The gate should have opened. I was in a hotel garage downtown after a work dinner. It was just after midnight, and most of the cars on level P2 were rentals black SUVs, and a few sedans left by people staying upstairs. The garage was clean in that hotel way. White walls, blue signs, 2 bright lights, music from the lobby barely reaching through the elevator doors. My car was parked near the elevator lobby, 3 spaces from a white minivan with a dent in the sliding door. I remembered the dent because I had used it as a marker when I parked. Before leaving, I stopped at the payment machine beside the elevators. The screen asked for my plate number. I typed it in, tapped my card, and waited while the machine made that thin printing sound. Payment accepted. The receipt came out warm. I folded it once and put it in the cup holder, then drove toward the exit arrows painted on the floor. The garage was almost empty. My headlights moved across polished concrete and parked cars. Every turn echoed louder than it should have. I followed a blue sign that said exit gate, then another one that pointed down a short ramp. At the bottom, I saw the gate. That calmed me down. It was right there, maybe 30 yards ahead. The arm was lowered, but the machine beside it was lit. Beyond the gate, I could see wet pavement and the red reflection of a traffic light outside the hotel. I pulled up slowly. The scanner blinked. The screen changed. For a second, I expected it to say something normal. Ticket paid. Please exit. Thank you. Instead, it said, Do not exit yet. I sat there with my foot on the brake. The words stayed on the screen. Not payment declined, not scan again, not see attendant. Do not exit yet. I looked at the receipt in the cup holder. It still said payment accepted. The timestamp was right. My plate number was right. Nothing about it looked wrong. I pressed the help button. It clicked once, then went dead. No voice. No dial tone. Just the hum of the garage lights above me. I told myself it was a system glitch. Hotel garages always had some problem after midnight. Maybe the gate had not synced with the payment machine yet. Maybe I had used the wrong exit lane. Maybe there was another gate on the other side. I reversed, carefully checked both mirrors, and backed away from the arm. The screen stayed lit as I turned the wheel. Do not exit yet. I drove back up the ramp and followed a second blue sign that said, exit other lane. At the time, that still felt reasonable. A machine had told me not to leave. So I tried a different way out. The second exit lane took me back past the elevator lobby, then around a line of parked cars I did not remember passing before. I kept the receipt in the cup holder and one hand tight on the wheel. The blue sign above the lane said exit other lane, so I followed it. That still felt like the right decision. One gate was broken, another gate would not be. The lane bent left, then straightened into a long row of parked cars. Too long. I had driven into that garage less than 3 hours earlier, and P2 had not been that large. The elevator lobby should have been behind me by then. The ramp to the street should have been ahead. Instead, the garage opened into another row of rental cars, black SUVs and sedans with hotel parking tags hanging from their mirrors. I passed the white minivan again. Same dent in the sliding door, same gray streak under the handle. I slowed down and looked at it carefully. It was parked 3 spaces from the elevator lobby just like before, but the elevator lobby was not supposed to be on this side of the garage. I checked the wall marker. P2. I had not changed levels. I told myself there could be more than one white minivan. Hotel garages were full of rental cars. People drove the same models. People dented doors. That explanation lasted until I passed it a second time. Same dent, same space, same lobby music bleeding faintly through the elevator doors. Only now the minivan was facing the opposite direction. I stopped the car. Not for long, just long enough to look behind me. In the rearview mirror, the lane was empty, but in a round security mirror above the next corner, I could see the exit gate behind my car. The same gate, the same lowered arm, the same wet street beyond it. It looked close enough to reverse into. I did not reverse. I had already learned not to trust the obvious thing in that garage. I drove forward instead, away from the mirror, following a painted arrow that said exit. The arrow led me around another corner, past another row of cars, and back to the white minivan. This time, I grabbed the receipt from the cup holder. I needed to look at something that had not changed. The top still said payment accepted. My plate number was still right. The timestamp was still 12:07 a.m. But under that, in the same black thermal print, there was a new line. Exit window missed. I stared at it until the paper shook in my hand. That line had not been there when it printed. I had watched it come out of the machine. I had folded it once and put it straight into the cup holder. A car horn sounded somewhere below me. Not loud, not close, but real enough to make me lift my head. I rolled down my window and listened. The sound came again, faint and muffled, from somewhere that was not marked exit. It came from the far side of the garage, past the parked cars where there were no blue signs at all. Then the gate screen behind me changed. I saw it only in the security mirror. The words were too small to read at first, but the glow was bright and steady. I leaned forward, squinting at the reflection. Do not exit yet. I put the receipt back in the cup holder and kept driving. Not toward the signs anymore, toward the sound. I followed the horn sound until the exit signs stopped agreeing with each other. One blue sign pointed left. The painted arrow on the floor pointed right. A hanging sign above the lane said exit gate, but the arrow under it pointed back the way I had come. I slowed down and turned off the radio, even though it had not been on. The car became too quiet. I could hear the engine ticking, the faint hum of the lights, and somewhere beyond, the concrete traffic moving through wet streets. The traffic was real. It had rhythm. Tires, brakes, a truck passing over a manhole cover. It came from the far wall, not from any sign marked exit. My phone had one bar. I opened the map out of habit, and the blue dot showed me outside the hotel, sitting in the middle of the street. But I was still inside P2 with concrete pillars on both sides and the same white minivan behind me in the rearview mirror. I closed the map. I did not need another thing lying to me. The garage ahead narrowed into a lane between parked cars. I could have forced the car through, but there was no clear turn beyond it. If I kept driving, the garage could keep giving me more lanes, more signs, more copies of the same minivan. I put the car in park and sat there for a few seconds, making myself accept the simple part. The car was not helping me anymore. I took the keys, my phone, and the receipt. I left my bag. I locked the doors and walked along the wall, keeping my shoulder close to the concrete. The air was colder outside the car. It smelled like wet tires and hotel cleaning products. Every few steps, I stopped and listened for the traffic again. A payment machine stood near a side elevator lobby. Its screen was dark when I passed it. Then it lit up behind me with a soft beep. Return to vehicle. I did not stop. The next screen woke up as I passed. Return to vehicle. Then another one farther down the wall. Return to vehicle. I kept walking. The traffic sound was clearer now. I could also feel a faint draft moving against my face. It was coming from behind a row of parked SUVs where a red emergency light glowed above a metal door. The sign on the door said, "Emergency exit alarm will sound." I stood there with one hand on the push bar. Part of me wanted the alarm. An alarm meant the hotel could hear me. An alarm meant someone would come down and tell me I was overreacting. I looked back once. The payment machine at the far end of the row was still glowing. Return to vehicle. Then my car alarm chirped once from somewhere behind me. Not the full alarm, just one quick lock chirp, like someone had pressed the button on my key fob. But the keys were in my hand. I pushed the emergency door open. No alarm sounded. The emergency door opened into a short stairwell not outside. The walls were bare concrete. The air was damp and cold, and somewhere below me I could hear traffic clearly now. Not reflected sound, not garage echo, real street noise. I went down one flight. There was no level marker on the landing, only a scratched metal door with an old push bar. I pressed my ear against it and heard rain tires and a bus braking somewhere close. Then I pushed the bar with both hands. The door opened into the alley behind the hotel. Cold rain hit my face. The loading dock was to my right, with stacked laundry carts under a yellow light. Across the alley, a dumpster sat beside a brick wall, painted with old delivery markings. Beyond that, I could see the street and the red glow of a traffic signal. I stepped outside and let the door close behind me. It clicked shut without an alarm. I did not try to open it again. I walked around to the front lobby, soaked and shaking, with the receipt still folded in my hand. The night desk clerk looked up from behind the counter and asked if I was okay. I told her the garage exit gate was broken and that I had gotten turned around on P2. Security came out a few minutes later. He was calm about it, which helped, and made it worse at the same time. He said the gate had been working all night. He checked the system from the desk computer and showed me 3 cars that had exited after midnight without a problem. I asked if he could see my car leaving or moving around inside the garage. He typed in my plate number, waited, then frowned. According to the system, my car was still parked on P2. Same space, no exit, no gate attempt after payment. I did not argue. I asked if someone could walk me back to it. Then I changed my mind before he answered. I told him I would come back in the morning. The next day I returned with hotel security. The garage looked normal in daylight, smaller, cleaner, almost embarrassing. My car was exactly where I had parked it near the elevator lobby, 3 spaces from the white minivan with the dent in the sliding door. The security guard said, "See, you probably just got turned around." I nodded because it was easier. Then I started the car. The dashboard said I had driven 12 miles since the trip meter reset. I reset that meter every time I filled the tank, and I had checked it before the dinner. The fuel gauge was lower too. Not much, but enough. Security checked the cameras later and told me the car never left its space. It never crossed the exit gate. It never appeared on any ramp camera. The only footage they found was me entering the garage at 12:03, paying at 12:07, and walking into the lobby from the alley at 1:41. The receipt was still in the cup holder. The top line still said, "Payment accepted." The second line still said, "Exit window missed." But at the bottom, there was one more line printed in the same black thermal font. "Exit completed, vehicle remained inside." I do not park under hotels anymore. If I have to go downtown at night, I pay extra for an open lot even in the rain. At least outside, when a street is in front of you, it stays there. I took the elevator because the stairwell door said no re-entry after 10 p.m. That was the only reason. I had gone to a guest lecture at a university downtown. It ended late, and by the time I got back to the parking deck, the campus felt emptied out in that strange way schools do after dark. Lights were still on in a few buildings, but no one was walking around. I had parked on level 5 because every lower floor was full when I arrived. The deck had blue level markers, narrow lanes, and an elevator lobby that smelled like old rainwater and dust. My car was near the far wall under a sign that said Level 5 Visitor Parking. The nearest stairwell was locked from the outside after hours. A sign on the door said, "No re-entry after 10 p.m. I did not want to get trapped in the wrong stairwell and have to call campus security over something stupid, so I pressed the elevator button instead. The doors opened slowly. Inside, the panel looked normal. G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No basement buttons. I pressed G. The elevator started down. At first, everything felt normal. The motor hummed above me. The numbers changed from 5 to 4, then 3, then 2. Then the display flickered. For half a second, it went blank. When it came back, it did not say 1. It said B1. I stared at it. The university parking deck did not have a basement. I knew that because I had parked there before. It had 5 levels and a ground exit. That was it. I pressed G again. The button lit up, then went dark. The elevator kept moving down. I told myself the display was broken. Maybe there was a maintenance level under the garage. Maybe B1 meant something else. Buildings had service floors. Old elevators had bad screens. Then the elevator stopped. The doors opened. Outside was another parking level. Lower ceiling, dimmer lights, concrete pillars, parked cars in 2 long rows. For a second, I did not move. The air smelled stale like a storage room that had not been opened in months. Dust covered the hoods of the nearest cars. Not thick dust, but enough to show no one had touched them recently. A red campus permit hung from the mirror of a gray Subaru near the elevator. The year printed on it was 3 years old. I looked back at the elevator panel. Still no B1 button. The doors started to close. I hit the open button fast. They slid back apart. I stayed inside the elevator and looked out at the level that was not supposed to exist. Then somewhere far down the row, a car alarm chirped once. Just once, like someone had locked a car. The car alarm chirp stopped as quickly as it started. I kept one hand on the open door button and leaned just far enough to look down the row. Nothing moved. No headlights came on. No person stepped out between the cars. The only sound was the elevator trying to close against my thumb. I should have stayed in the elevator and kept pressing G until something worked. That would have been the normal thing to do. But the elevator was the only reason I was there at all, and I no longer trusted it. I stepped back from the doors without stepping out, then pressed G again. The button lit up. The doors closed. For 1 second, I thought it had listened. Then the elevator moved down. The display did not show G, it showed B2. I hit the emergency call button. A speaker crackled above the panel, but no one answered. I tried my phone next. No service. The call failed before it even rang. I put it back in my pocket and watched the number over the door stay on B2. When the elevator stopped, the doors opened on another parking level. It looked like B1 but older. The lights were weaker. The painted arrows on the floor were faded almost gray. Several cars had covers pulled over them, and one row was blocked by orange cones that looked brittle with age. I stayed inside the elevator this time. I looked for anything that proved it was only a service level. A maintenance sign, a storage room, a loading dock, anything. There was nothing but parking spaces and old campus decals hanging from rearview mirrors. A dark green Jeep sat near the elevator with dust across its windshield. Someone had written, "Wash me into the dust," but the letters were not fresh. They had softened at the edges, as if humidity had blurred them over months. Hanging from the mirror was a blue faculty permit from a year the university no longer used. Then I saw something on the elevator floor. It had not been there before. A folded parking permit decal lay near my shoe, sticky side, half covered with lint. I picked it up because it looked too new compared to everything outside. The university logo was current. The barcode was clean. The printed plate number made my fingers go cold. It was my plate. Same number, same state, same car description. Gray Accord, but the expiration date was 3 years old. I checked my windshield reflection in the elevator doors. My current permit was still there, hanging where it should be. I knew it was current. I had renewed it online 2 months earlier. This one in my hand should not exist. The doors started closing again. I jammed my shoe between them. They bumped it once opened, then tried again harder. That was when I understood the elevator was not waiting for me to choose. It was taking me somewhere. The display flickered. B3. I pulled my foot back. Before the doors crushed it, folded the old permit into my palm and looked out at B2 one last time. Far down the row, another car alarm chirped once, closer than before. The elevator doors closed before I could stop them. I pressed G again, then 5, then the emergency call button. None of them stayed lit. The panel accepted the touch, blinked once, and went dark like the elevator was only pretending to listen. The permit decal was still folded in my hand. My plate number, my car, expired 3 years ago. The elevator dropped lower, not fast, not like a fall, just steady enough to make my stomach sink with it. When it stopped, the display said B3. The doors opened. This level was darker than the others. Only every third light worked, and the ones that did had a weak yellow color. The painted lines on the concrete were old and narrow, the kind that made every parking space look too small for modern cars. A sign on the wall said faculty only, but the university had stopped using that wording years ago. I did not step out. Across from the elevator, a security mirror hung above a blind corner. Its surface was cloudy, but I could still see the elevator doors reflected in it. In the mirror, the display above me did not say B3. It said level 5. I looked up. The real display still said B3. I looked back at the mirror. Level 5. For a second, the reflection showed the elevator empty. No me, no open doors. Just the lobby on level 5, normal and bright, as if I had never left it. Then the speaker above the panel crackled. A voice came through, flat and damaged. "Please remain on your assigned level." I stepped back from the doors. The voice repeated once, "Please remain on your assigned level." The doors began to close. I shoved my keyring between them. The rubber edge pressed against the keys opened a few inches, then tried to close again. The motor made a low grinding sound overhead. I had a small folding tool on my keychain. I used the flat edge to pry at the rubber seam between the doors, not because I knew what I was doing, but because staying inside felt worse than breaking something. The doors opened another inch. Behind them was darkness concrete and a narrow service ledge outside the elevator frame. I could see conduit running along the wall. The elevator jerked. The display flickered again. For half a second it showed B4. There was no time to think about whether that was possible. I forced the doors open just enough to turn sideways and climb out onto the ledge. My shoulder scraped the metal frame. My shoe slipped once on dust, and I grabbed the conduit hard enough to hurt my fingers. The elevator doors shut behind me. A second later, the car moved. Down. I stayed pressed against the wall, breathing through my teeth, listening to it sink below me. Then it stopped somewhere under my feet. The speaker crackled again, but now the voice came from inside the shaft. Please remain on your assigned level. I kept one hand on the conduit and started moving along the ledge toward a gray service door at the far end. The ledge was only wide enough for 1 foot at a time. I kept my left hand on the conduit and my right hand against the wall, moving sideways through dust and cold air. The service door was maybe 20 feet away, but in the dark shaft it felt much farther. Halfway there, the elevator moved again below me. The cable hummed. The wall vibrated under my palm. I froze and pressed myself flat against the concrete until the sound passed under my feet and faded lower into the shaft. The gray service door had no handle on my side, just a recessed latch and a warning sticker that said, "Authorized maintenance only." I pushed the latch with my thumb. Nothing happened. I tried again harder, then used the edge of my key to pry the latch upward. It opened. I stumbled into a narrow service corridor behind the elevator. The floor was dusty, but not old like the basement levels. There were fresh shoe prints near the wall and a plastic water bottle in the corner. Normal trash, normal dust, things that made me want to cry because they belonged to the real building. At the end of the corridor was another door. This one opened into a stairwell. The first marker I saw said level 4. I stood there for a second just reading it. Not B3, not B4, level 4. The sign was blue, the same as the rest of the university deck. Above me, I could hear faint music from somewhere outside, maybe a student car passing on the street. I went up 1 flight. Level 5. The door opened into the parking deck, I remembered. Brighter lights, wider lanes, blue visitor signs. My car was still near the far wall under level 5 visitor parking. I did not take the elevator down after that. I drove the ramps all the way to the ground level, even though every turn made my hands sweat. When I reached the exit gate, the arm lifted like nothing had happened. The next morning, I called the campus parking office. The woman who answered sounded bored until I asked whether the deck had basement parking. She said no, 5 levels and ground exit only. I asked about service levels under the elevator. She transferred me to maintenance. The maintenance supervisor told me the elevator shaft did have access panels, but not where I described. He also said the service latch could not be opened from inside the elevator without a maintenance key. I did not tell him I had climbed out. I did not tell him about B1, B2, or B3. I only asked if old faculty permits were ever stored somewhere under the deck. He said not under it. There is nothing under it. That afternoon before I left for work, I checked my windshield. My current permit was still hanging exactly where it should have been. Same barcode, same expiration date, same plastic sleeve. But there was something behind it. I peeled the sleeve back carefully. Under the current permit was another one. Same university logo, same plate number, same car description. Gray Accord, expired 3 years ago. One corner was folded over, creased flat against the plastic, the same way the decal in the elevator had been folded in my hand. I threw both permits into a drawer when I got home. I have not looked at them since. I also stopped parking on the top floor of any deck. People tell me elevators cannot take you to places that are not there. Maybe they are right, but I know what the display said. And I know that somewhere under level 5, a car alarm chirped back at me from a floor that was never built. I had parked in Space 27 for almost 2 years. That was why I knew something was wrong before I let myself admit it. The garage under my apartment building was not confusing. It was one underground level 1 roll-up gate, 1 elevator lobby, and 2 long rows of assigned spaces. The walls were bare concrete. The lights buzzed all night. Storage cages lined the far side behind chain-link doors. It was ugly, but it was familiar. My space was 27. I parked there every day. That night, I got home a little after midnight. I had stopped at a pharmacy after work, then sat in traffic behind a lane closure for almost 40 minutes. By the time I pulled into the garage, I was tired enough to feel annoyed at everything. The roll-up gate opened with its usual metal rattle. I drove past the visitor spaces, turned left after the elevator lobby, and headed toward my row. My headlights moved across the painted numbers on the wall. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, then 28. I stopped with my foot on the brake. For a few seconds, I just stared through the windshield. There was space 26 on the left side of the pillar. There was space 28 on the right side. Between them, there should have been my space, my painted number, my gray sedan's usual spot beside the concrete column. But there was no 27. There was not even an empty gap where it should have been. The wall just continued. I put the car in park and leaned forward like changing the angle would make the number appear. It did not. I looked behind me. The elevator lobby was where it always was. The storage cages were across the lane. The same old bicycle was locked behind cage 12 with one flat tire and a milk crate tied to the rack. Everything else was normal. That made it worse. I told myself I was in the wrong row. It was late. I was tired. Underground garages repeat themselves. Maybe I had turned one lane too early after the elevator. I backed up, slowly, went around the support pillar, and started again from the lobby. This time I counted out loud. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 28. I stopped again. The space number had not changed. There was still no 27. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out wrong, quiet and dry. Then I noticed the small directional sign on the concrete pillar above the row. Spaces 21 to 30 right arrow. The arrow pointed straight at the spot where space 27 should have been. I sat there with both hands on the wheel, staring at that arrow. My car was running. My apartment was 5 floors above me. My keys were in my hand. Nothing was blocking the exit. And somehow, I could not find the place I had parked in every night for 2 years. I got out of the car and left the engine running. The headlights stayed on the wall, washing over the numbers, like they should have been able to prove something. I walked to space 26 first and put my hand on the painted number. The paint was real, old, chipped, and cold under my fingers. Then I stepped to the right, where space 27 should have started. There was only wall, not a new patch, not a covered number, no stain where paint had been scraped off. The concrete between 26 and 28 looked smooth and ordinary, like the builder had never intended a space there at all. I crouched and checked the floor. The parking line skipped from one space to the next without a break. I stood up and looked back toward the elevator lobby. It should have been close, maybe 30 feet behind me. Instead, it looked farther away than it should have, past more parked cars than I remembered passing. The lobby lights were still visible, but smaller, almost like I was looking down a longer garage than the one under my building. That was when I pressed the lock button on my key fob. My car should have chirped behind me. It did not. No lights flashed, no horn, nothing. I pressed unlock, then lock again harder, like that would change the distance. Still nothing. I looked at the car in front of me and realized I was not standing beside my own vehicle anymore. My running headlights were still somewhere behind me, but the row I had walked into had changed. There was a silver sedan in space 26 now. Space 28 held a dark SUV with a cracked taillight. Neither one was mine. I turned back toward the elevator lobby and started walking faster. The numbers moved with me. 24, 25, 26, 28. Again. The same missing space, the same wrong jump, the same small sign above it. Spaces 21 to 30 right arrow. I stopped near space 26 and tried my key fob again. This time I heard a faint chirp. Not close, not behind me. It came from deeper inside the garage, beyond the row of storage cages, where there should not have been another lane. I took one step toward the sound and bumped my hand against the concrete pillar. My keys slipped from my fingers and hit the floor near the painted 26. I heard them land. Metal on concrete. I bent down right away. They were gone. I checked under the silver sedan around the tire beside the pillar, even under the edge of the wall where dust collected. Nothing. The floor was bare except for a thin gray layer of tire dust. Then, from somewhere behind the emergency stairwell door, I heard a soft metallic jingle. One short sound, like keys touching a hook. I looked at the emergency stairwell door. It was the same one I passed every day without thinking about it. Gray metal, push bar, a red sign that said, "Emergency exit only." Usually it stayed shut unless someone was moving furniture or the elevator was out. Now it was open about 2 inches. The key sound came again, small, metallic, close. I pushed the door with my shoulder and stepped inside. The stairwell smelled like concrete dust and old laundry detergent from the storage cages outside. The light above the first landing flickered once, then held steady. There were no stairs going up from that landing, only a short concrete platform, a wall, and another gray door straight ahead. My keys were hanging from a hook on the wall. I knew they were mine before I touched them. Same black fob, same pharmacy reward card, same bent mailbox key I had never replaced. Above the hook was a small white label, 27. Under the label, there was a pale rectangle of old adhesive, like another sign had been peeled away before that one was stuck there. I took the keys off the hook and held them tight in my fist. I had not opened that stairwell. I had not walked in there. I had not hung them on that hook. Behind me, the door to the garage clicked shut. I turned fast and pushed it open again. It opened back to the same row. 24, 25, 26, 28. No space 27, no gap, no car. My engine was no longer running. The garage was quiet now, too quiet for a building with apartments above it and a street outside. I pressed the unlock button on my fob again. Somewhere deep in the garage, my car chirped once. The sound came from beyond space 28, but there was no lane beyond space 28. There was supposed to be a wall, then storage cages, then the elevator lobby. I stepped out of the stairwell and looked toward the sound. The row seemed longer than before. Not dramatically, not enough that I could prove it in a photo, just enough that the elevator lobby lights looked farther away and the roll-up gate noise from the street was gone. I thought about calling building security. Then I looked at my phone. No service. That was normal in the garage sometimes, but normal did not help me anymore. I could keep looking for space 27. I could keep following the number until the garage gave it back. But every time I looked for it, the place felt larger. The numbers kept moving around the missing space like they were protecting it. So I stopped. That was the first thing I did that felt right. I stopped trying to find my car. I stopped trying to make the row make sense. I put the keys in my jacket pocket, kept one hand on them, and looked at the floor instead. There was dust everywhere. Old tire dust, gray and soft, settled near the walls. Most of it had no pattern. But near the end of the row, past the place where 27 should have been, there was a fresh tire mark. It curved away from the numbered spaces and disappeared behind the storage cages. From that direction, I felt the faintest movement of cold air. I followed the tire mark. The tire mark led behind the storage cages. I had never walked back there before. There was no reason to. The cages belonged to tenants, and the space behind them was usually full of dust, old cardboard, and things maintenance had not thrown away yet. But the tire mark was fresh. It cut cleanly through the gray floor dust, curving past cage 12 and toward the far wall. The cold air got stronger as I followed it. I kept my eyes on the ground, not the numbers, not the signs. Every time I looked up, the garage seemed to stretch a little farther, so I watched the tire dust and the line of my own shoes beside it. The path took me past pillars I did not recognize. B14, B15, B15 again, B16. I stopped at the second B15, then kept moving. I did not want to give the garage another question to answer. Somewhere ahead, I heard the roll-up gate. Not the loud rattle it made when a car entered, just a faint metal vibration like wind pressing against it from outside. That sound meant street air. It meant the real edge of the building was somewhere close. The tire mark crossed a narrow service lane and disappeared under a parked vehicle covered in dust. It was an old, dark sedan with no plates. A faded apartment permit hung from the mirror, but the year was wrong. Not ancient, just wrong enough. Last year's color, last year's font. I did not stop to check it. On the wall beyond the sedan, someone had painted a line of white letters. Space 27 reserved. There was no parking space under it. No painted lines, no number on the floor, no car stop, just a blank concrete wall with those words across it. For a moment, I felt my keys move in my pocket. Not a lot, just a small tug against the fabric, like the fob had been pulled toward that wall. I put my hand over the pocket and kept walking. The cold air was coming from a pedestrian door near the ramp. It was half hidden behind a concrete column and a stack of folded traffic cones. There was no exit sign above it, only a small sticker that said, "For resident use only." I grabbed the handle. Locked. I tried my building fob against the reader beside it. The reader flashed red. Then from behind me, my car chirped again. Closer now. The sound came from the blank wall marked Space 27 Reserved. I did not turn around. I hit the reader with the fob again. Red. I tried the small brass key on my ring, not the apartment key. The old side door key the leasing office had given me when I moved in and never asked for back. It fit. The lock turned. I opened the door and stepped into cold night air behind the apartment building next to the dumpsters and the service alley. The roll-up gate was to my left. Cars passed on the street beyond it. Real cars, real tires on wet pavement. I let the door close behind me and walked to the front lobby without looking back. I went through the Australian lobby because I needed another person with me. The night concierge was behind the desk, watching something on a tablet with the volume low. I must have looked bad because he took one look at me and stood up before I said anything. I told him my garage key was acting up and that I could not find my assigned space. That sounded stupid even while I was saying it, but it was easier than telling him Space 27 had disappeared. He came down with me using the main elevator. The whole ride I kept one hand in my pocket around my keys. I expected the elevator to stop somewhere wrong. It did not. It opened on the garage level like it always had. The garage sounded normal again. The roll-up gate rattled somewhere near the entrance. A car passed on the street outside. The ceiling lights buzzed. From the elevator lobby, my row looked the way it always looked. I walked slower this time. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. 28. Space 27 was back. My car was in it. The concierge looked at me, then at the number on the wall. He did not say anything rude. He did not have to. I could see what he thought. Tired tenant, late night, walked the wrong row, got scared for no reason. I wanted to believe that too. Then I noticed how the car was parked. It was backed in perfectly, straight between the lines, rear bumper facing the wall, front end pointed toward the lane. I never backed into that space, not once. Space 27 sat too close to the concrete column, and there was a storage cage across from it that made the angle tight. I always pulled in nose first because it was easier even if it meant backing out carefully in the morning. The concierge said, "Is that your car?" I nodded. He said, "Then you found it." I did not answer. I walked around the car checking for scratches, broken glass, anything missing. The doors were locked, the windows were up. My pharmacy bag was still on the passenger seat. The dashboard clock glowed like nothing had happened. There was a thin layer of dust on the windshield. That was not unusual in the garage. Dust settled on everything down there. But someone had dragged a finger through it. One short mark, then another, then a curved line. Together they made two numbers, 27. The writing was on the inside of the windshield. I checked twice because I wanted to be wrong. I wiped the outside glass with my sleeve, but the number stayed there pale and clear, drawn from the cabin side through the dust. The concierge saw it too. He stopped looking annoyed after that. He offered to call building security and pull the garage camera footage. I agreed mostly because I wanted someone else to say the word footage first. The next afternoon, management told me the cameras had not shown anyone moving my car. According to the footage, I drove into the garage at 12:16 a.m. My headlights turned toward my row. Then the camera near the elevator glitched for 9 minutes. When the picture came back, my car was already in space 27 backed in. They said the glitch happened sometimes. I asked if the camera had ever glitched exactly 9 minutes before. They said they did not know. I asked for a new assigned space the same day. The leasing office moved me to the outdoor lot behind the building. I paid extra for it and never complained. For weeks I avoided the garage completely. I used the front entrance, I carried groceries through the rain. I parked under a streetlight and told myself I was being practical, not scared. But every month, the building still emailed me a parking statement. And every month, under my new outdoor lot number, there was a line they said was probably left over from the old system. Previous assigned space 27. I asked them to remove it. They said they did. It was still there the next month. I took a picture of where I parked because airport garages all look the same after midnight. That was the only reason I had proof later. My flight home had been delayed twice, then finally landed a little after 1 in the morning. By the time I reached long-term parking, the terminal behind me was almost quiet. A few people were still dragging suitcases toward rideshare pickup. A shuttle bus hissed at the curb. Everything smelled like wet asphalt and jet fuel. My car was in long-term garage B, level 5, blue zone, row C, space 512. I knew that because I had taken a photo before my trip. In the picture, my gray SUV sat under a blue sign that said, level 5, blue C. The space number on the wall behind it was 512. I remember feeling smart for taking that photo. I had been tired when I parked, and I knew I would be worse when I got back. The elevator from the terminal bridge opened onto level 5. I stepped out with my carry-on, pulled up the photo, and started walking toward Blue Sea. At first, everything matched. Same blue signs, same low concrete ceiling, same shuttle pickup arrows, same row letters painted on the pillars. Then I saw the space numbers: 401, 408, 417, 426. I stopped and looked back at the photo. Space 512. I looked at the wall in front of me. Spaces 401 to 460. For a few seconds, I just stood there with my suitcase handle in one hand and my phone in the other. I told myself I had come out on the wrong side of the elevator bank. Airport garages were not simple. Some levels had split sections, some rows wrapped around. Maybe Blue Sea had more than one stretch. I walked farther. The numbers kept going the wrong way. 433, 441, 452, 460. Then the row ended at a concrete wall with a blue sign pointing left. Blue Sea continues. I followed it. The next lane should have picked up at 461. Instead, the first space was 402. I stopped again. Behind me, the elevator lobby looked farther away than it should have. I could still see the lit sign above it, but the hallway of parked cars between us seemed longer now. I pressed the unlock button on my key fob. Nothing. No chirp, no flash. I pressed it again and held it higher. Still nothing. That did not scare me at first. Airport garages were bad for signal. Key fobs did not always reach through concrete. My car could have been one row over or around the corner or behind a support wall. I opened the airport parking app and used the car locator. It asked for my plate number. I typed it in. The screen loaded for a few seconds, then showed one result. Vehicle located, garage B level 5, Blue Sea, no space number. I stared at that for longer than I should have. The app agreed with my photo. The garage did not. Somewhere below me, a shuttle bus beeped as it backed up. The sound echoed through the concrete and made it hard to tell which direction it came from. I looked at the blue sign again. Blue Sea continues. Then I looked at my phone. Level 5, Blue Sea, space 512. I took my suitcase and kept walking because at that point it still felt like a normal airport problem. A bad sign, a split row, a tired mistake. Something I would laugh about once I found the car. At the next corner, there was a security mirror bolted above the turn. In the mirror, I saw the back of my gray SUV. It was parked at the far end of the lane under a blue sign. I stopped breathing for a second. Then I turned the corner. The space was empty. The wall behind it said, Bichios Uniki. I stood in front of space 512 for almost a full minute. It was real. That made it worse. The number was painted on the wall in the same airport blue as the others. The space lines were there. The concrete stop was there. There were faint tire marks on the floor, the kind every parking space has after years of use. But my SUV was not there. I opened the photo again and held it up beside the empty space. Same wall, same blue sign, same number. In the photo, my gray SUV filled the frame. In front of me, the space was empty. I pressed the unlock button again. Nothing. Then from somewhere behind me, I heard a faint chirp. I turned fast. No lights flashed. No doors unlocked. The lane behind me was empty except for parked cars and the security mirror at the corner. I pressed the button again. This time the chirp came from ahead, far ahead. Too far for the space in front of me to be 512 and the car to be somewhere else in the same row. I walked faster, pulling my suitcase behind me. The wheels clicked over expansion joints in the concrete. Blue signs kept pointing me through the garage. Blue C, elevator bank C, shuttle pickup. The row letters started to feel wrong after the next turn. C4, C5, C6, then C4 again. I stopped at the second C4 and looked back. The first C4 sign should have been behind me, but I could not see it anymore. The lane curved too much, or it had become longer. I could not tell which explanation was worse. A car locator kiosk stood beside a payment machine near an elevator lobby. I went to it because machines were supposed to be better than memory. I typed in my plate number again. The screen loaded, blinked, then showed the same result. Vehicle located garage B, level 5, blue C, no space number, no route. Just the same answer, as if that should have been enough. I hit print directions. The kiosk made a dry clicking sound, but no paper came out. Above the kiosk was an airport map under scratched plastic. Garage B had 5 levels, ground through 5, no basement, no overflow deck, no second blue C. I looked down at my parking ticket. It was still in my jacket pocket, folded once from the day I left. Entry, garage, B level 5, blue C, normal. I held on to that ticket like it meant something. Behind the kiosk, a blue shuttle pickup sign hung from the ceiling. I had not noticed it when I walked up. Blue C pickup level 6. I read it twice. Then I looked back at the airport map. 5 levels. I turned back to the shuttle sign. It still said level 6. A shuttle bus beeped somewhere below me, farther away than before. The sound echoed through the garage and came back from 3 directions at once. My key fob felt heavy in my hand. I stopped pressing it. That was the first useful decision I made. If the garage wanted me to chase the chirp, I was not going to chase it. I turned around and started back toward the elevator lobby where I had entered. There should have been security phones near the terminal bridge. There should have been a help button. There should have been people somewhere above me. I followed the signs for elevator bank C. The first one pointed left. The second pointed straight. The third pointed back toward blue C. Then I saw a new sign mounted above the lane. Elevator bank C transfer. It had not been there before. The word transfer bothered me more than level 6. Transfer meant there was another route, another section, another place the garage thought I was supposed to go. I followed the sign only far enough to reach the elevator lobby. It should have been the same one I had entered from the terminal bridge, but it was not. The wall color was the same. The blue airport signs were the same, but the trash can had moved to the opposite corner, and the vending machine that had been beside the elevators was gone. In its place was a payment machine. The screen was black when I walked up. Then it turned on. Return route ready. I did not touch it. The machine clicked anyway. A thin paper slip came out of the slot and curled against the tray. I stood there looking at it, telling myself not to pick it up. Then I did, because leaving it there felt worse. The slip had only one line. Follow blue C to overflow. There was no fee, no timestamp, no plate number, just that instruction. I folded the slip and put it in my pocket with the parking ticket. I did not know why. Maybe because paper felt safer than screens. Paper could not change after you looked away. At least that was what I told myself. I tried the help phone beside the elevator. It had a dial tone. When I pressed the airport assistance button, the tone stopped. No ringing, no voice. The line just went quiet, as if someone had lifted the other end and decided not to speak. My phone still had service, so I opened the map. The blue dot showed me outside the garage near the employee shuttle road. I was standing under concrete. I closed the app. That was when I stopped asking machines for directions. I took 3 quarters from my pocket and placed one on the floor beside the payment machine, one by the elevator call button, and one under the corner of the airport map. If I came back here, I would know. If the quarters moved, I would know that too. Then I listened. The garage had its own sounds, light buzz, far-off tires, elevator cables, but under that there was a shuttle bus braking somewhere outside. A long hiss, then a low engine idle. It came from past the payment machine beyond a lane marked Blue Sea Transfer. I did not follow the slip. I followed the sound. The lane sloped slightly, not up or down enough to be a ramp, just enough that my suitcase kept pulling against my hand. Blue signs appeared at every turn. Blue Sea Transfer, long-term overflow. The words changed slowly, like the garage was waiting to see which one I would accept. I stopped at a concrete pillar and marked it with the corner of my suitcase wheel, scraping a small black line into the dust. Then I kept moving. At the next turn, there was another pillar with the same scrape already on it. I did not stop to test it. The shuttle sound was clearer now. So was the airflow. Cold air moved across my face from somewhere ahead. It smelled like rain diesel and wet pavement. Real outside air. I trusted that more than any sign in the garage. At the end of the lane, I found a glass door under a blue overhead sign. Long-term overflow. See, the door should have led to a stairwell or a sky bridge. Instead, it opened onto a covered walkway. The walkway stretched across darkness toward another parking deck I had never seen before. The covered walkway should have connected 2 normal parts of the airport garage. It had the right details at first. Blue railings, airport ads, and scratched plastic frames. A sign reminding drivers to take their ticket with them. Through the open sides, I could see dark service roads below and the red lights of shuttle buses moving near the terminal. Then the walkway kept going. It stretched farther than any connector should have, passing over lanes I did not recognize. The shuttle sounds faded behind me. The terminal lights became smaller. Ahead, the other parking deck sat in a dim yellow glow, separate from the rest of the airport, like an old section that had been closed and forgotten. The door at the end opened without a badge. Inside, the air changed. It was colder, but stale. The kind of cold that comes from concrete, not weather. The lights were older here, yellow instead of white, and several of them buzzed in uneven pulses. A baggage cart stood near the wall with one wheel bent inward. Airport posters hung above the lane advertising routes the airline no longer flew. A blue sign on the first pillar said, Level 6 Overflow C. I stopped just inside the door. I looked behind me. The covered walkway was still there, but the far end had gone dark. I could no longer see Garage B. I could not see the terminal bridge. I could not hear the shuttle buses anymore. Only the lights. Only the concrete. Only a faint electrical hum under everything. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the Level 6 sign. The camera opened focused and captured the wall clearly, but when I checked the photo, the sign in the image said Level 5. I did not take another picture. I put the phone away and started walking. Overflow C looked like long-term parking, but wrong in small ways. The cars were parked too evenly with too much space between them. Some had dust on the hoods. Some looked freshly washed. A few had airport parking tags hanging from mirrors, but the dates were from different years. Then I noticed the pattern. White SUV, gray sedan. Red pickup, white SUV, gray sedan. Red pickup. The cars were not identical. Different plates, different dents, different stickers. but the order repeated down the row with just enough variation to make me feel like my brain was trying to reject what my eyes were seeing. I stopped looking at the cars. On the floor near a concrete pillar, something white moved in the draft. A luggage tag. I picked it up before I could talk myself out of it. It was one of those paper tags airlines wrap around suitcase handles. Most of the print was torn, but I could still read 3 letters from the passenger name. My initials. The flight number was mine too. That should not have been possible. I had carried on my bag. I had not checked luggage. There was no reason for a baggage tag with my initials to be lying on the floor of a parking level the airport said did not exist. I dropped it. The paper skidded once, then stopped under the tire of a parked gray sedan. Far ahead, I heard a shuttle bus brake. One clean hiss. Real, outside, close enough to follow. Close enough to follow. I moved toward it, staying near the wall, ignoring every blue sign that pointed deeper into overflow C. The air grew colder near the far end of the deck. I could smell rain again, and wet asphalt and diesel exhaust. Then I saw the payment machine. It stood alone beside a row of concrete barriers, older than the others. Beige plastic, dead screen, card reader cracked. The airport logo on the side was faded almost white. There was no gate near it, no exit lane, no reason for it to be there. A strip of paper was caught in the receipt slot, moving slightly in the draft. I stood in front of the machine and listened. The shuttle brake hissed again somewhere beyond the wall. Then the dead screen lit up. The screen glowed pale blue. No logo, no payment amount, no instructions, just one line. Transfer accepted. I took a step back from the machine. The strip of paper in the receipt slot moved again, fluttering in the draft. It was not printing. It was already there, caught halfway out, like someone had tried to pull it free and stopped. I should have left it alone. I know that now, but at the time it was the only physical thing in front of me that did not come from a screen, a sign, or a reflection. I needed something real, something I could hold. I pulled the paper loose. It was not an airport parking receipt. It was only a torn corner of one. The paper was thinner than my airport ticket, off-white instead of bright thermal paper, and the edge was ragged like it had been ripped by hand. Most of the text was gone. Only one printed line remained clear. Level 6/C. I stood there with the paper between my fingers and felt the garage go quiet around me. Not silent, quiet. Like every sound had moved farther away. The shuttle brake hiss was gone. The light buzz was lower. Even my suitcase wheels, when I shifted my weight, sounded muffled against the concrete. I had never seen that receipt before. It did not belong to the airport. It did not have a logo, a gate number, or a barcode. It looked like something from a different parking system entirely, but it was here, in Overflow C, in a machine that had no gate. The screen changed. Vehicle arrival pending. I looked down the row. At the far end of Overflow C, somewhere past the repeating white SUVs and gray sedans, my key fob chirped. One clean chirp. The keys were in my hand. I squeezed them so hard the metal teeth bit into my palm. Then another chirp answered from behind me. Closer. I turned, but nothing moved. The car stayed dark. The yellow lights buzzed overhead. The covered walkway door was still at the far end of the deck, but it looked smaller than before, farther away, like the garage had added distance between us while I was looking at the receipt. The machine clicked again. A new line appeared on the screen. Return to vehicle for completion. That was when I stopped thinking about my car. Not delayed thinking, not confused thinking. Stopped. Whatever was happening in that garage wanted the search to continue. It wanted me to follow signs, check screens, press buttons, chase chirps, compare numbers, prove things. Every time I tried to confirm one detail, the garage gave me another route deeper inside it. So I folded the torn receipt corner once and put it in my jacket pocket. Then I walked away from the payment machine. The screen brightened behind me. Return to vehicle for completion. I kept moving toward the only thing that still made sense. Air. The draft came from behind a parked airport shuttle van near the concrete barrier. It was an old white shuttle with no driver, no route sign, and a layer of dust across the windshield. The front tire was turned sharply toward the wall, like someone had parked it in a hurry and never came back. Behind it was a narrow gray service door. No airport sign, no blue arrow, no posted route, just a push bar and a strip of black rubber at the bottom where air moved through. I put my hand against the gap. Cold outside air pressed against my fingers. Real air. The payment machine clicked again behind me. I did not look back. I pushed the service door. It did not open. I pushed harder. Nothing. The key fob chirped again, much closer now, from somewhere between the parked shuttle and the row behind me. I looked around for something to pry the door with. On the wall beside the shuttle was a small emergency cabinet with a cracked plastic cover. Inside was a red-handled tire tool and a folded reflective triangle. The cabinet was unlocked. I took the tire tool, wedged the flat end under the door latch, and pulled. Metal scraped. The door shifted half an inch. Cold air rushed through the gap. Behind me, the payment machine printed something. A long strip this time. I heard paper spilling from the slot and curling onto the floor. Then the key fob chirped one final time, right beside my shoulder. I threw my weight against the tire tool. The latch snapped. The latch snapped and the service door opened into rain. For 1 second, I did not move. I only stood there with both hands on the tire tool, feeling cold air hit my face through the gap. Then I shoved the door wider and stepped outside. I was on an employee shuttle road behind the airport. Not in the garage, not in another walkway. Outside, a shuttle bus was parked about 50 yards away with its hazard lights blinking. Beyond it, I could see the terminal service entrance, a security booth, and the white glow of runway lights through the rain. Somewhere above me, a plane moved low through the clouds, loud and real. The door tried to swing shut behind me. I let it. It closed with a heavy metal click. There was no handle on the outside, no sign, no blue airport marker, just a flat gray door set into the back wall of a service building I did not recognize. I walked to the security booth with my suitcase dragging behind me. The guard inside opened the window before I reached it. He asked where I had come from. I pointed at the gray door. He looked past me, then frowned. I told him I had gotten lost in long-term garage B. I said I had followed signs to overflow C. I said I had been trying to find my car. The guard did not laugh. That made it worse. He called someone on the radio, then told me to wait inside the booth where it was dry. 10 minutes later, an airport operations supervisor arrived in a white pickup. He asked the same questions again, but slower. Garage B had 5 levels, he said. No level 6. No overflow C. No connector walkway to another deck. No public access door where I said I had come out. I showed him the photo of my parked car. Level 5. Blue C. Space 512. Then I showed him the parking app result. Garage B. Level 5. Blue C. He said my car was probably still there and offered to drive me back. I said no before he finished the sentence. They took me to the terminal instead. I filed a report at a small airport police desk near baggage claim. The officer wrote down everything I said except the parts I stopped saying when I heard myself say them out loud. Overflow C. Level 6. The receipt corner. A machine that printed without a gate. He asked if I wanted medical help. I said no. I just wanted to go home. I took a ride share from arrivals and left my SUV at the airport. 3 days later, parking services called. They had found it. Long-term garage B. Level 5. Blue C. Space 512. Exactly where my original photo said it was. I went back in daylight with my brother. The garage looked normal, loud, busy, full of people dragging luggage and forgetting where they parked. The elevator opened onto level 5. Blue C had spaces in the 500s. Space 512 was there with my gray SUV sitting under the sign like it had never moved. The odometer had not changed. The gas gauge had not moved. Nothing was missing. Even the parking ticket from my trip was still in the center console. My brother said, "Maybe you came out the wrong elevator." I did not answer. On the dashboard under the windshield was a receipt I had never printed. It was longer than the torn corner in my pocket. Same paper texture, same black print, no airport logo, no barcode, no normal garage information. The first line said, "Exit fee paid." The last line said, "Exit stair C paid in full." The lower right corner was missing. I took the torn piece from my jacket pocket and held it against the gap. It fit. Not close. Exactly. Level 6/space C completed the missing corner, like it had been torn from that receipt in the first place. My brother asked me what it meant. I folded both pieces together and put them in my wallet. I told him I did not know. That was not completely true. I knew one thing. My car had been in Space 512 when I left for the trip. It had been in Space 512 when they found it. And somehow, somewhere between those two facts, I had paid to exit a stairwell that should not exist. Before you leave, look back at the stories again. Level 6, Space C Stair C, a receipt that should not exist. A car found exactly where it was parked, after someone had already escaped from somewhere else. If one detail stayed with you, comment which story felt the most believable. Those comments help shape the next episode. Leave a like if this one felt real enough to bother you, and subscribe if you want the next set of stories waiting when the lights go out. Different garage. Same feeling that the exit was never really yours.